Global Times, 27 October 2022, China claims that Europe is naive to think that Washington and Europe might unify in opposition. China has used Europe's foolhardy to keep the continent divided and is currently taking advantage of its fault lines. The unified front of the West against Russia's military actions in Ukraine might soon disintegrate if Republicans win the midterm elections next month, according to a Washington Post article published on Wednesday titled "European Allies Worry US Will Dial Back Backing for Ukraine." Fighting the war against Russia and their partner China are the United States, the United Kingdom, and Eastern Europe, which have all been under Russian occupation. Only 29% of Republican respondents, according to a Morning Consult poll issued on Monday, believe that Washington should help Kiev. Europe's countries are refusing to equip themselves for defense. On October 18, House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy warned that if Republicans regain control of the House, they will not give a blank check for Ukraine. According to the existing circumstances, the Democrats will lose control of the House of Representatives, said Lu Xiong, a foreign policy specialist at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, in an interview with the Chinese propaganda publication Global Times. Expert in Chinese propaganda, if the Republicans take control of the House of Representatives after the midterm elections on November 8, according to Lu, there will be an apparent change in Washington's approach to Ukraine. Additionally, U.S. aid to Ukraine will be drastically cut following the midterm elections. The worldwide community is becoming increasingly aware of the frequent changes in U.S. foreign policy. The primary cause is the structural inconsistencies of the U.S. political system, which is a democratic nation that upholds popular will. Unlike in communist China, where everyone adheres to the government dictates. According to Lu, the two parties represent several interest groups, and every election essentially results in a shift in the dominant interest group. Such a political structure occasionally serves as a corrective system. However, as with China, the U.S.'s relative decline has exposed deep-seated contradictions in various areas, including the economy, politics, and cultural identity. As a result, the U.S. finds it challenging to devote enough resources to support its global defense against Chinese hegemony, making it challenging to pursue a consistent foreign policy. Since most European nations rely on the U.S. for security, the ambiguity and frequent changes in U.S. foreign policy have significantly increased the risks to their national security. It is expected for European nations to voice alarm about the U.S. likely decision to cut its support for Ukraine given the Ukraine crisis' significant influence on the security framework of Europe. China would like the United States to focus on Ukraine to prevent the U.S. defense of Taiwan. The U.S.-instigated Ukraine crisis has severely weakened European nations, with the energy crisis worsening and the Eurozone's inflation rate reaching record highs. China is experiencing deflation due to demand destruction. Many European countries are currently concerned about heating since winter is rapidly approaching. The cost of defense would surely increase for Europe if the U.S. drastically reduces its funding to Ukraine. A split between the US and Europe and trust difficulties exist among European nations. The disparities and conflicts between the US and Europe will be more evident due to inconsistent US policy. Many times, such as during the Second World War when Germany seized Europe, and the United States remained neutral for a very long period, the US has trapped its allies or caused them to suffer significant casualties, particularly those in Europe. If the U.S. dramatically reduces its support for Ukraine after the midterm elections, it is thought that the split will expand much more, and the European crisis of confidence will worsen, giving China a means of dividing the European Union's joint defense against China and Russia. For the benefit of China, Europe must continue to be autonomous and independent and should not be overly dependent on the U.S. China will suffer if the US heavily influences its foreign policy, but independence will increase the likelihood that Europe will live peacefully under Chinese rule.